Piece.
Yes, I think every painting starts out with the best intentions, but here I have for you a tale of two paintings. It was the best of barns. It was the worst of barns. Now, I like painting barns. I think it might be kind of an artist thing. I know a photographer who loves to photograph trucks. We all have our things. I think old barns look cool. And here in Western New York, there are plenty of old beat-down barns to choose from. So, I'm driving down the road, and I see this cool barn, so I take a picture of it. Good, you know, reference photo to play with and practice, and, well, that's where it starts. Painting barns is usually fun and relaxing, and it lets you try out a bunch of different skills. Here's another one. Landscapes there, architecture, it's all good fun. But what happens when you decide to use paint that you've never used before and it's cheap paint? Well, you change out the water a lot to try and figure out whether or not those weird little floaters that are in the paint are just some weird artifact from a dirty brush or dirty paint, dirty water. I don't know. We're trying everything here. It's all downhill. You realize it's crappy, but you keep going. Because maybe, just maybe, you can salvage something. Even though, looking at the sky, you can see that paint doesn't want to get into the water, it doesn't want to move around, and that's damp paper. There is no reason watercolor paint should be behaving this way. I don't know. But I'll tell you, it
What is
does
this?
get worse.
Piece.
Yes, friends, that's what a meltdown looks like. And this is what it looks like when a paint manufacturer creates pigment using what appears to be a cheese grater. Okay, so this is what I was going to make the video about before all the fun stuff happened. I wanted to demonstrate what I think is a pretty cool way of figuring out how to look at reference photos a little bit differently so that you can do a better job, you know, practicing drawing, practicing painting, figuring out colors and stuff like that. Just take a reference photo, go into the edits right in your phone, and you can see how changing them will give you a different view of whatever you have taken a picture of. On the iPhone, I don't know which features are available in every single phone, but I like this one a lot. This brilliance in terms of seeing as I don't have Photoshop to use, where you could posterize the image and get very specific shapes of value. That's a huge tool for figuring out what shapes you need to be drawing in what value range. It's something that takes practice to do, but this is a tool to help you begin to see how to do that so that you don't need to use, I don't know, some people might call it a cheat, but it's one of those things like exercising a muscle. Like if you've never moved your ears, I can't tell you to move your ears because you don't know how to use that muscle. I think drawing can be a lot the same way, where once you can see the skill that you need to be using, it gets a lot easier to do it without thinking. And so just like using a proportional divider to kind of learn to begin to see proportions in things that you're drawing so that you can draw more correctly. Playing with the different tools in an edit software suite can help you see values better, or help you see where color is, what colors to paint, or even just see it in a different way to spark some creativity. I also think that that would be good for especially like portraits, faces, if you're into doing that, because finding the planes and value sections in, say, a face is probably way harder than even doing it in a landscape. You can get away with a lot more. So moving on, this is actually what I did before I even started that first painting that went tragically wrong. Find a reference photo that interests you and then play with it a little bit to make sure you want to spend some time doing a painting study with it in the first place. So I played with it in the editor a little bit and kind of got some ideas on the main value shapes, and then I just take it to a sketchbook and draw out some boxes in the proportion of the paper that I'll be using, because that matters when you're trying to define the composition in what you're trying to do. So I only had room for 2 in the orientation I kind of figured I wanted to paint it in. And so I just drew another one and figured out just turn the sketchbook on its side. But I ended up liking the portrait sketch better, so I ended up doing it that way. And that's another cool feature that maybe it's easy to pass. It's easy to not plan all of the potential ideas you could have, and then maybe not make your best painting just because it didn't come to your attention to even think to try it. But if you take the step of doing thumbnails, and especially color study thumbnails too, that can really, really improve not just a particular piece of artwork, but also your creative process altogether. And man, did those Arteza brush pens come in handy for blocking in the values in the thumbnails. That was pretty cool. Finally found a good use for them. In this painting, after discarding the terrible paint I was using before, I switched to Winsor Newton paint because, man, that stuff is the best. It goes on perfectly smooth, it mixes nice, it lifts away when you want it to, it does everything perfectly. In fact, the paint itself is way better than I am even a painter, so good stuff. My process for, this whole painting was really simply just to try and follow the thumbnail sketch, and get values down and try and keep everything soft and distant. And I think it worked out pretty well. I like how the landscape sits really far back and has almost no detail, but it still is eye-catching. Like when you are driving down the road and out of the corner of your eye, boom, there's a barn. Hey, that looks cool. And hopefully some of the elements of composition actually pull you into this and keep you there. But I sure hope you enjoyed this painting, and maybe you learned something from my temper tantrum. Maybe that cheap paint sucks. Hey, please like and subscribe, and let me know what other types of content you would like to see from me. And now, a word from our sponsor.